Hello everyone, thank you very much for joining IB.com. This is SQL Server Database Administration Chapter 1. In this lesson we will see introductory remarks. We'll define what database administration is. We'll also see different kinds of indexes, and we'll also define what index is. And we will also see XML and spatial index. In addition to this, we'll see how can we set up a user account, and we'll also see the full text index in this course. When we come to the definition of SQL Server Database Administration, is a mechanism by which we can control security of a database, we can keep a high availability of a given database, and we can control the actual database in a way that the SQL Server is available every time. So a SQL Server Database Administration is a mechanism or a science that by which we can control security, we can keep high availability of a database, including installing a database. So that is the SQL Server administration. So as to administer a database, so as to maintain security, there are different tools we can use, and then we'll see one by one. The first tool that we can use in SQL Server Database Administration is import-export tool. This tool is very important to import or export data from SQL Server to another objects like Excel or file, just a flat file. Just to see that, what you should do is you have to go to Start, All Programs, and then you have to select Microsoft SQL Server, any version. Right now I have SQL Server 2008 R2 and 2012. Let me just go to SQL Server 2008 R2. When I come to SQL Server database, R2, there are two import-export 32-bit or 64-bit. These are based on the bit or the version of Windows you have. You can import or export data to or from SQL Server. So you can click this one, and then it will let you go one by one. So you have to specify the server name. That's the data source that you want to specify. If you are getting data from a flat file, you have to specify the flat file from here. If you are specifying from Excel, you can specify Excel. And if you need to import or export from SQL Server, you have to select Microsoft LEDB provider for import and export. And you have to follow that. That's the first tool, and we'll see that one. The second tool that we will use is BIS. BIS is Business Intelligence Service, by which we can develop SSRS, that means reporting service. We can also do analysis service. And in addition to this, we can use a reporting service, analysis service, and integration service. These are the business intelligence service tool. This can be done by using business intelligence service tool. Just to go there, you have to select all programs and Microsoft SQL Server R2. You see here, there is business intelligence service or development studio. When you click that one, it will open another window. It's the Visual Studio window by which you can create a project. The project can be SSRS, SSIS, or analysis service. So this is a very, very nice tool by which we can do this business intelligence service. As you can see here, this management studio is open. That means SQL Server Management Studio, and then Visual Studio, sorry. And then based on this, you have to come here, go to File, and then you can go to New and Project. Automatically you can do that. Okay, let me just come here, File, New, Project. When you open a project, it will give you different options. For example, if you would like to create integration service project, you can click this one. Or if you need to use a wizard, you can use this one. Report has also a wizard, or you can create a report project. And there is analysis service and import analysis service from another database. And then you can do this by using this management studio, that's business intelligence service. So business intelligence service is another tool by which you can create SSRS, SSIS, or analysis service. The other one is management studio. Actually, this is a tool that we used earlier. If you want to create a database, if you want to create different objects like tables, views, store procedure, trigger, or we can create a function or whatever object we want within a database, we have to use SQL Server Management Studio. SQL Server Management Studio is very important to manage the actual database. So if you are an administrator, SQL Server administrator, you have to use import-export data. That is a tool. Business Intelligence Service, Management Studio, Analysis Service is also available. Analysis Service by itself is there. Plus, you can go through Business Intelligence Service. As you can see here, you can come to all programs, Microsoft SQL Server 2008 R2, you see analysis service is there. If you like to configure your database, there is a configuration tool. This one is very important to check which service is running and which one is not running. As you can see here, there is SQL Server Configuration Manager, and then click this one, and you will see all instances of SQL Server that is running within your environment. And then you will see that one. That is SQL Server Configuration Manager. As you can see here, there are different services that are running. As you can see here, for example, SQL Server Agent for SQL Server Express version is not running. If you would like to run this, just right click and hit start, and automatically it will launch SQL Server Agent. And the same is true for other agents, and you can do that one from here. So the configuration tool is very important to configure, to turn on or off the given or different services. As I mentioned earlier, SSRS is by itself a service, SSIS is a service, analysis service is a service. In addition to this, database engine is also a service. As you can see here in SQL Server, the Management Studio, when you click Connect, there are different options that you should select. There is database engine, and then there is also SQL Server reporting and reporting service and SSIS. The other one is document. If you like to get help from SQL Server, you can go through the document. So as a SQL Server administrator, if there is something that you don't know and you need help, you can go to the document and you can get help. As you can see here, go to all programs, SQL Server 2008 R2. If you come to documentation and tutorials, this is a really very huge tutorial. You can go online, or you can see the document within your computer if you install that when you install SQL Server. The other one is integration service. As I tried to mention earlier, SSRS is to display a report, SSIS is to exchange data from one source to another destination. And if you like to do that, you have to use BIS, Business Intelligence Service. And analysis service is a mechanism by which we can analyze three-dimensional data. So integration service, documentation, configuration service, analysis service, management studio, BIS, import-export tool, and also performance tool are the different tools that SQL Server Database Administrator can use to perform different activities. So during the course of this study, we will see one by one, and we'll see how can we use different tools to manage our services. So when we come to the other one, the performance service, it is possible to check the performance of a given SQL Server database or a server by itself. And if you come here, all programs, again SQL Server 2008 R2, and if you come to performance tool, there are two tools available in here, and there are actually third-party tools that we can use, and also there are tools that are embedded with SQL Server Management Studio. But for timing, there are two tools under performance tools. The first one is Database Engine Tuning Advisor. It gives you a dashboard kind of looking how your database performance is. And SQL Server Profiler, it can profile, it can check the performance of your query. For example, if you run this one, it will open another window. You have to specify the server. You have to filter out different columns and conditions. As you can see, when I start, you have to connect to the database first, and there are event selection. Events are occurrences that will occur when something happens. So these are different events. If you need to see all events, you can just click this one, and then you see hundreds and hundreds of events that are happening when the user interacts with the database. And if you need to just specify different specific columns, you can just uncheck this, and then automatically will hide the event. And if you need to filter column, you can filter the column by specifying in here. And we'll see this one when we deal with SQL Server Database Administration in the next session. But for timing, SQL Server Database Administration is a mechanism by which we can manage our database using different tools. Of these tools, import-export data, BIS, Management Studio, Analysis Service, Configuration Tool, Documentation, Integration Service by itself, or we can get it from BIS, and the other one is Performance Tool. These are different tools that SQL Server Database Administrator can use and perform database management. Now, the next step is how can we increase the performance of a given SQL server. You may hear about indexing. Indexing is a mechanism by which we can index contents of a given table or view to sort in ascending order, by which we can filter out or we can search. So index is like a book index. At the back of the book there are indexes or keywords, and once we find the keywords we can go to specific location, that means specific page, and we can get data. Likewise, index is a key by which we can go to the content of a given table. There are two types of indexes. The first one is clustered index. Clustered index determines the order in which rows of a table are stored on a disk. If a table has a cluster index, then rows of that table will be stored on a disk in the same exact order as a cluster index. There are different questions that will arise into your mind when we are going to use this cluster index. That's a very big question. The simplest answer is that when we have a relationship between two tables and create an index in the secondary table column, that is a foreign key, automatically it will make the search fast. When we are using a cluster index as an advantages, when we need cluster. Cluster means grouping things. When we need to group things, that is called cluster index. Let me just show you a very good example. For example, let me just use taxi management. That's our let me first connect to the actual server and then you'll see. Okay, use taxi management. Okay, and then once we use select all from taxi, as you can see here, this taxi table by itself is has taxi as a taxi ID and company number, year, and mileage. And disregard this when we come to spatial index and XML index. We will see this too. But for timing, assumes that this table has these 4 columns. And if you use company number as a cluster index, that means the taxis belong to the same company will come together. That means we are clustering, we are grouping taxis all from the different companies. So clustering is a mechanism by which we can group or cluster things. And why it is called clustered? Because it is clustering. It is grouping similar things together. In our example, as we saw the taxi information, interests belong to a single company would be right next to each other on a disk. This is called clustering or grouping things in a similar fashion. What is the advantage of using clustering index? It will enhance searching. What is the disadvantage? If a given row has a value that is updated, it will shift the entire record. As you can see here, for example, if I change this 3 to 4, this 3 record, that means this record will move to the last row after 3. So updating and moving data will degrade the performance. So make sure that when you assign a cluster index for a given column, make sure that that column is not frequently updated. When you frequent update and we have a cluster index, it will degrade the performance of a given table or database. Why can a table have only one cluster index? Because a cluster index determines the order of row. So the order of row will happen only once. As you can see in here, for example, take this one. This one happens only one time because there is a primary key integration rule, as we saw earlier in database development. So this column will not appear again. So if the cluster index determines the order, that means we will have only one cluster index within a table. Make sure that you have to answer this question when you have any interview question. In a table, we will have one and only one cluster index. And when we come to the second one, this is non-cluster index. Unlike cluster index, non-cluster index is not pointing directly to the data, but non-cluster index has a value and a pointer points to the actual data. So this is the second layer of indexing. That means you will have a key and you will have a value. Once you have a key and a value, the key and the value pair will point to another table. That table will have that row will have the actual data. That means the cluster index is pointing the actual data, and then cluster index is pointing to the key. That key may be a cluster index or another non-cluster index. So this is the second layer. And then cluster index will store both the value and the pointer to the row of the table where the value is actually stored. The major difference between these two, the cluster and non-cluster index, is that cluster index determines the order. Non-cluster index has no effect on the order. Cluster index is fast because we will have only one cluster index in a table. Non-cluster index is slow because we can have 2,249 non-clustered index up to SQL Server 2008. After 2008, it changed. The number of non-clustered index we can store is grown. And change is very difficult when we change the cluster index. The same is true for non-cluster index. Cluster index do not need to store pointer because it is pointing directly to the data. Non-cluster index is pointing to the pointer. That pointer points to the data. Now, how can we create cluster index? It's very simple. To create a cluster index, we have to use create cluster index, and we have to give the name. This is the name of the cluster index. Let me just make it clear. This is the name of the cluster index that we should use. This is the name of the table that we should use, and this is the column name. So if you need to create a cluster index on a taxi ID column of the taxi table, we have to use create cluster index. We have to give the name of the index on the name of the table with bracket the name of the column. And then if you need to create non-cluster index, it's the same thing, but the only difference is that cluster index will be changed to non-cluster. If you didn't mention either cluster or non-cluster index, if we say create index, it will create a non-cluster index by mistake. Having seen this much about non-cluster and cluster index, these two can store values that are very minimal. That means minimal length. But what if we have a very big, huge data? And what if we are storing XML data? What if we are storing a specific location of a given area? So this time we need to have another index. The first one is spatial index. Spatial index is a mechanism by which we can index a spatial location or a given location. If the given column has a geographic or geometry data type, we have to use a spatial index. And if a given column has XML data type, we have to use XML index. And the way that we can create both spatial and XML index is like this. As you can see here in the taxi table, if we have XML column, as you can see here, data is stored in XML format. When you click this one, it will open XML format of a given record. What if we would like to just sort this one and to create XML index? So as to create XML index, first you have to have a column with XML data type. After that, you can create XML index, as you can see here. The other one is the spatial index. Spatial index is a combination of X and Y or XYZ combination to locate a given location. So as to do that, we have to specify. We have to specify the spatial index. So before we have spatial index, a given column should have geographic or geometry data type. Before we have XML index, a given column should have XML data type. Okay. The other one is actually, as you can see here, there are different examples that we can see. For example, if you need to create a spatial index, we have to specify this one. Or if you like just to specify everything, you can specify like this. Create spatial index, the name of the index, the name of the table, the name of the column, and then you have to specify these properties. That means the bounding box. Where is the minimum X, the minimum Y, and then you have to specify the grids, the cell per object, and the padding index. And when we come to XML, we have to specify just create primary XML index, and then we have to specify. But make sure that before you create XML index, you need to have a primary index, that is a cluster index. Without having a cluster index, it's impossible to create the XML index. Okay, if you need to drop a given index, we can say drop index. If you need to alter, we can alter that index. Now, there will be a problem right now. For example, if we are deleting a given record or inserting a given record very frequently, there will be a dispersed index. That means the index will be spread everywhere. If you need just to make it in our order, we have to rebuild. So what we should do is We have to right click on the index, select rebuild, and then, or if you need to filter, we can filter. Okay, these are actually the different kinds of indexes. There is also a filtered index. Filtered index is a mechanism by which we can specify index for a given column with a given condition. For example, we create a non-cluster index in here, and that's the name of the index. This is the name of the table. This is the name of the column, and we specify a condition. Apply this index where company number is 2. So we'll find on our record where there are the records that are company number 2. This will be indexed. So this is very good because instead of indexing the entire record, we knew that company number 2 is very frequently used, so we can create a filter index. So far what we saw is there are two major indexes, cluster and non-cluster index. In addition to this, if we have XML data type, we can index that using XML index. If we have a special index, we can use special index. Or if you need to filter a given index, we can use filter index, and this is the syntax. It's possible to create indexes in a view. The same thing, you have to specify the name of the view instead of the name of the table, because view is a representation of a table, but it doesn't have data. As I said earlier, if there is any fragmentation, we have to specify we have to review that so as to avoid fragmentation. Okay, these are the contents that we saw so far. We saw introductory remarks. We saw what index is. We saw what cluster and non-cluster index, XML index, spatial index. We'll see how can we set up a user account, but we saw non-cluster and cluster index. We saw how can we create spatial index, XML index, and then we saw how can we rebuild a given index, and we saw the filtered index. As you can see here, for example, if you like to rebuild a given index, you have to go to the database. You have to go to your specific database in here, and then you have to come to the table. You have to specify this table, and there is index. If there is index, what you should do is just right click on here, and there is a rebuild. So rebuilding means avoiding fragmentation of this given table or this given index. So when we do that, automatically we'll rebuild the actual SQL Server index. That's it for today, and next time we'll see the second chapter of SQL Server Database Administration. Thank you very much for joining IOB.com. This is Introduction to SQL Server Database Administration.